Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me for some highlights of the Budget 2022, which will also serve as the 2021-2022 third quarter fiscal update. Budget 2022 shows our significant fiscal progress, strengthens our healthcare system by expanding key system capacity, and gets more Albertans working. Our government has been unrelenting in its focus on investment attraction, economic recovery, growth, and job creation. And we're seeing significant diversified economic growth. Our government was elected on a platform committed to responsible fiscal management, and to that end we established 3 fiscal anchors to inform fiscal policy and guide decision-making. The first anchor was getting per capita spending in line with comparator provinces. In 2019, when we took office, as per the McKinnon report, we inherited a government that on a per capita basis spent $10 billion more per year than similar provinces. Moreover, the previous government's operating spending was increasing by 4% per year. Had we stayed on this trajectory, many of the programs and services essential to Albertans would have simply become unattainable and out of reach. Over the last 3 years, I'm pleased to announce that we brought that 4% annual spending increase down to less than 1% per year, leaving spending essentially flat over the term. Our costs to deliver government services are now within the range of those comparator provinces. We are no longer an expensive outlier, and that is tremendous news for our province and the sustainability of the programs and services we provide for all Albertans. The government also established an anchor committing to keep Alberta's net debt to GDP ratio below 30%. Abiding by this principle preserves our net financial position, or in other words, ensures a strong balance sheet. Our projections for the net debt to GDP ratio have improved significantly over the year. In Budget 2021, the ratio was estimated to be 24.5%, and that number has continued to drop over the course of the year. It's now forecast to be 18.3% at the end of this fiscal year. Alberta has the lowest net debt to GDP ratio in the nation, and our responsible fiscal management will maintain that strong position. With increased economic and fiscal capacity, and by maintaining discipline in our spending decisions, our fiscal future as a province is vastly improved. The past 2 years have revealed a lack of healthcare capacity, specifically ICU, surgical, and critical care capacity. To add additional capacity and account for an aging and growing population, Budget 2022 adds $600 million in 22-23 and a total of $1.8 billion over the fiscal plan. The budget also includes funding to attract more doctors to practice in rural or remote communities of need, and $64 million is allocated to the emergency medical services to address capacity needs and other pressures within the system. These investments will improve health outcomes for Albertans and ensure the province is better prepared for any future system-wide health challenges. While I'm thankful COVID hospitalizations are coming down, there still remains uncertainty. To ensure health has the resources required to deal with this uncertainty, Budget 2022 sets aside $750 million in a COVID contingency. This contingency provides flexible funding to address the surgical backlog and ensure the province can cover other evolving and uncertain pandemic-related costs. As we know that COVID-19 has intensified the mental health addictions crisis, funding in Budget 2022 will continue to enhance the mental health and addiction system and increase access by adding a further $20 million on top of our previous commitment of $140 million over 4 years. This new funding will help establish a coordinated network of community-based services and supports. Leading up to the budget, I spoke to various chambers of commerce, business councils, and a wide variety of other stakeholder groups. The common theme I heard was that job creators in growing sectors of the economy are experiencing shortages of available labor, and that Alberta needs training, apprenticeships, and reskilling in areas of immediate and emerging need. We also know that right now, many Albertans are looking to get back to work or retrain and reskill for emerging opportunities. Alberta's continued economic recovery depends on all Albertans accessing opportunities to build their skills, pursue their career aspirations, and find employment to support themselves and their families. That's why Budget 2022 includes more than $600 million for a new initiative called Alberta at Work. Alberta at Work will connect more young people with employment, break down barriers for underrepresented groups, and help Albertans who've been unemployed for an extended period of time get back to work. Over the course of the fiscal plan, the government will expand the collegiate learning model, assisting high school students on their path to post-secondary education, trade designations, and in-demand jobs. And we'll add approximately 7,000 additional post-secondary seats in high-demand areas such as computer and data science, information systems technology, finance, agriculture sciences, health, and aviation. New capital investments, such as the expansion of the veterinary school at the University of Calgary, will address a critical shortage of large animal veterinarians in rural Alberta. For those who are currently seeking employment, the government will create additional job placement and integrated learning opportunities, and low-income students will be able to benefit from new non-repayable support when enrolled in high-demand programs. Alberta's economy is poised to grow a further 5.4% in 2022, and real GDP is expected to grow to $390 billion in 2025. Oil prices have strengthened to levels not seen since 2014, boosting cash flows and activity in the energy sector. Further expansion of the province's export capacity will ensure the province can meet growing oil demand in the coming years. But even as the province's energy industry recovers, Alberta's economy is becoming more diverse, with growing investment momentum in sectors such as digital technology, finance, and petrochemical and hydrogen manufacturing. And with economic conditions improving, there are more Canadians moving to Alberta than leaving the province for the first time since 2015. Exceptional business and employment opportunities, as well as our lower cost of living, affordable housing market, higher earnings, and lower taxes make Alberta a most attractive place to call home. In January 2022, when the nation lost 200,000 jobs, Alberta gained 7,000. We've not only recovered all the jobs lost during the pandemic and economic crisis, but we've added 33,000 more. This trend is expected to continue with projected employment growth of around 4% in 2022. In closing, I would like to review the key fiscal metrics of Budget 2022. For the current fiscal year, the deficit forecast is now $3.2 billion. This is $15 billion lower than reported in last year's budget and $2.6 billion lower than reported at the mid-year fiscal update. Increased revenues are driven by rising non-renewable resource revenues, personal and corporate tax revenues, and investment income. Total expense is forecast to be $64.9 billion in 21-22. Spending increases over budget are almost entirely due to crop insurance payments and emergency assistance for farmers coping with drought, increasing costs to sell oil due to higher energy prices, and higher investment management fees due to increased investment income and growing account balances. The province's finances are benefiting from higher energy prices and a stronger economy, as well as the government's progress controlling operating costs, ensuring Alberta's programs and services are delivered efficiently. This was a key objective in the fiscal plan presented in 2019. And while the pandemic presented extreme fiscal challenges, the government never lost sight of its original commitment to Albertans. As a result, we're projecting modest surpluses in each of the next 3 fiscal years. This will be the first balanced budget projected in this province since 2008. In 22-23, we're projecting a surplus of $500 million. While non-renewable resource revenue is a key part of the revenue mix in Alberta, other sources of revenue are also showing real strength. Alberta's job creation tax cut, which lowered the corporate income tax rate from 12% to 8%, is an important component in the government's plan to ensure the province has a competitive business environment. Right now, with a very competitive business environment, Alberta is attracting investment by the billions, and this is driving a significant expansion of Alberta's fiscal capacity. With expanded fiscal capacity and an enhanced investment climate, we expect to collect more corporate income tax revenue over the course of the fiscal plan at an 8% rate than the previous government collected with a 12% rate. The revenue forecast in 22-23 is $62.6 billion. While markets rebalance next year, energy prices and investment income are expected to moderate and come down from their current levels. The government is forecasting that the price of West Texas Intermediate will average $70 US per barrel in 22-23, dropping to $69 and $66.50 in the out years. However, in spite of declining oil prices, total revenue is expected to grow to over $63.9 billion by 24-25, again as a result of expanded fiscal capacity. Total expense in 22-23 is $62.1 billion, which is $2.8 billion less than the forecast for 21-22, due to the extraordinary costs of the pandemic and drought subsiding. Government operating expense is expected to increase by 2.3%, leaving our average annual increase over the 4 years since taking office at less than 1% per year. Without the flattening of this operating expense curve, we would not be presenting a balanced budget today. In 2022, Alberta's economy will fully recover from the contraction that first started in 2014, and we will lead the nation in economic growth. The government's responsible, disciplined fiscal plan is working, and we remain committed to our fiscal anchors. We must stick to our fiscal plan to create a sustainable fiscal future for this province. Budget 2022 moves Alberta forward. Forward to a strong and more diversified economy. Forward to a labor force with the skills and experience required for growth in new and emerging sectors. Forward to a future where the burden of debt is not the legacy left to the next generation. Budget 2022 moves Alberta forward to a bright, thriving, and prosperous future where Alberta firmly secures its place as the economic engine of our nation. Thank you. And I'm happy to take some questions.
We are now going to go to the media Q&A. You will have one question, one follow-up, either two off the top or one question and one follow-up following the response. We are going to go to those on the phone. Before you begin your question, please identify yourself with your name and your outlet.
Thank you. The first question is from Chris Varco, Calgary Herald.
Minister, you're budgeting for surpluses of $500 million, $900 million, and $700 million over the next 3 years. How are you going to deal with any future surpluses, particularly if oil prices come in much higher than our forecast in your budget?
Sure, Chris. Good. Thank you for that question. We've made it clear in this fiscal plan that our intention with our surplus is to effectively reinvest it back into the Heritage Savings Trust Fund to the level of investment earnings in the Heritage Savings Trust Fund. In previous years, effectively, we've used virtually all the earnings from the Heritage Savings Trust Fund, brought them back into general revenues. And so that fund has only grown by a CPI accelerator. And the first thing we'll do is stop robbing the Heritage Savings Trust Fund and reinvest those funds back into the Heritage Savings Trust Fund. I heard from Albertans during our budget consultations, and I was surprised the number of Albertans that talked about reinvesting again into that Savings Trust Fund. Now, for unanticipated surpluses in excess of Heritage Savings Trust Fund earnings, they will be allocated between the Heritage Savings Trust Fund and debt repayment. We're certainly working on building a plan right now for debt repayment. There's a lot of factors to consider there, including the government's cost of capital, including the timing of debt maturity, as well as our earnings potential in the Heritage Savings Trust Fund. I'll be interested in hearing from Albertans in terms of their priorities going forward.
Chris, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. With 3 straight years of surplus, do you believe Alberta has ended its years of structural deficits, or are we still on the royalty roller coaster?
Well, I mean, what I can say, Chris, is we're using, I would say, credible but cautious energy projections for the upcoming 3 years, $70, $69, and $66.50 for WTI. And what I can say confidently is we have a far more sustainable fiscal reality today than we had 4 years ago.
Operator, can you please put through the next question?
David Staples, Edmonton Journal.
Thanks for taking my call, Minister. Minister, how important, we've seen the price of WTI go from, it kind of cratered at $16 a barrel U.S. in April 2020. It's now over $90. how critical has this been to Alberta's changing economic fortunes?
Well, there's no doubt rising energy prices have certainly improved the balance sheet and the bottom line of Alberta's income statement this year. For that, I'm personally very thankful. But we've been focused as a government over the last 3 years on managing what we can manage. We've been informed and guided by the fiscal anchors that we presented to Albertans in Budget 2021. And of course, those anchors were to keep our net debt to GDP ratio below 30%. And maybe the most important fiscal anchor in my mind, and that was to gradually, thoughtfully, and carefully bring down the cost of delivering government services to be in line with comparator provinces. So that fiscal discipline, that very significant effort by certainly every ministry across government, I believe is really positioning the province to be much more fiscally sustainable in the future. At the same time, we've done everything we could and continue to ensure that Alberta has the most competitive and attractive business environment possible. And the result of that is announcement after announcement of investment proponents choosing Alberta to expand their business, start a business. And that's resulting in, of course, increased economic growth, which translates into increased fiscal capacity. So we're seeing a more diversified economy, which is good news on a whole host of fronts, including securing a more stable revenue structure in the future. So yes, I mean, there's no doubt we're relying on the energy industry. It's a big part of the province's economy. But as we continue to see a more diversified economy, we will begin to see more stability in other revenue streams. Corporate income tax revenues are a revenue line that we're projecting to go up very significantly over the next 4 years. In fact, I think I mentioned this in my opening remarks, but over the course of the fiscal plan, we're expecting to collect about $400 million more per year in corporate income tax revenue at an 8% rate than the previous government did on average during their years at a 12% rate. That speaks to the expanded fiscal capacity and a more diversified economy.
Did you have a follow-up question?
I do. Minister, you're projecting surpluses. We have GDP projected at 5.4% for 2022. Oil prices are high. But would you go so far as to say that Alberta is booming right now? And is this going to be a sustained boom, if it is?
Well, one thing we know, oil is a commodity. Commodity prices go up and down. And that's why I would say this. We need to continue to be informed by our fiscal anchors. We need to continue to work to deliver government programs most efficiently, to continue to find new and innovative ways to deliver government programs. And we need a continued focus on investment attraction and economic growth, which leads to expanded fiscal capacity, but maybe more importantly, leads to additional opportunities for Albertans broadly.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Thank you. Don Braid, Calgary Herald.
Minister, thanks for taking my questions. A quick question on debt. Debt is creeping up a little bit still over the next few years, which seems kind of surprising, and you explained how you're handling that. But quickly, are you borrowing for operations any longer? And if you aren't, I presume you're not. If you're not, how many years did the government actually have to borrow or operate to keep the lights on, so to speak?
Well, debt, of course, is driven by many factors and components. One thing, Don, we are projecting taxpayer-supported debt to ultimately be at approximately $98 billion at the end of 21-22, so at the end of March here of 2022. We're projecting that number to actually drop in 22-23 to approximately $95 billion. So again, that's a combination of effectively the benefits of a balanced budget and some cash management considerations, and of course, non-cash items as well as capital expenditures weigh in and play into the necessity to borrow. But what I can say is, basically going forward, if we can effectively be producing balanced budgets, our need to borrow for operations should really be non-existent.
Did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I did. And I think I was a little inaccurate there. I was basically referring not so much to an increase in debt, but an increase in debt servicing costs, which is still creeping up a bit over the next few years. But the next question I had was regarding the natural gas rebate, which we had a little trouble getting answers on in the briefing this morning. It's supposed to start on the 1st of October. My questions are, will it be retroactive at all? And do you think with a $6.50 trigger point for, I guess, monthly payments, it will trigger at all? Because my understanding is that regulated rates with most utilities is lower than that now. I'm just wondering if it's actually going to have any effect.
Sure. Well, to answer your first question on debt servicing costs, of course, as you know, we have debt that matures every year. Some of that, of course, is refinanced, and we're expecting higher debt service costs, higher costs of capital on new debt, at least relative to the very low interest rates we paid over the last couple of years. So that's one reason why we're expecting our debt service costs to creep up, very marginally, but to creep up over the next 2 years. With respect to the consumer price protection measure, which is really what the natural gas rebate program is about, you know, in the event we did experience very high natural gas prices that would exceed the threshold before October, my expectation is that we would just move the date. I expect that we would provide the rebate at that point in time. And, you know, I can't predict whether we'll actually hit the threshold or not. But, you know, as Alberta consumers take a look at what's happening perhaps in Europe and Asia and see natural gas prices, you know, going, you know, hitting the $20 and $30 mark, they can be rest assured that that if the trigger of $6.50 is broken, that there will be government price protection. And this $6.50 amount, this $6.50 trigger, that was effectively the same threshold, in fact, a slightly lower threshold than the threshold Ralph Klein brought in back in 2003 when he brought in the same type of measure at a time of high natural gas prices.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Thank you, Brianna Karsten-Smith, Global News.
Hi, Minister. I'd like to ask you about the Alberta at Work program. I'm wondering if you can give me a succinct explanation of the purpose. It seems like the idea is sort of matching people who don't have the skills with jobs that don't have skilled workers. And what sort of metric are you going to be using in terms of, at the end of this 3-year funding cycle, whether or not it was a success?
Well, that's a great question, and this is a great challenge. You know, this last, probably 4 or 5 months, as I've traveled across the province in pre-budget consultations, visiting with employers, visiting with chambers of commerce and others, I've been surprised at the real labor shortage that we see across regions and actually across sectors. It's really significant. And the fact that we have an unemployment rate that's north of 7%, just doesn't quite compute for me. And as we've looked into it, and certainly Minister Shandro, the Minister of Labour, has done a lot of work, we've recognized that, I mean, firstly, it's a complex problem. There are a number of factors at play. But one of the factors is that many Albertans who want to get back into the workplace just don't have the skills, perhaps, skill set to do it, maybe not the experience. And so that's really what has informed our approach to strengthen Albertans' labor skills to ensure that they can find a meaningful job in the new economy. And so, you know, there'll be a whole series of programs that are basically targeted in part to expand key capacity at our post-secondary institutions, capacity in occupations that are in great demand. And so we've talked about some of those, you know, in high technology and in the sciences, agriculture sciences, certainly in finance, aerospace and aviation, and others. So in terms of how we will measure our progress, I would say, I mean, obviously there'll be some very, you know, very objective measurement points, metrics, including the number of spaces that we create at post-secondary institutions. We expect to create 7,000 spaces with this funding, and of course we'll be measuring to ensure that we deliver on that metric. But I'll be very interested to see both Alberta's employment participation rate as well as our unemployment rate, and basically combine that with effectively the success that employers are having at procuring, in fact, hiring folks that with the right skill sets and experience to produce in their businesses. I think all of those broader metrics will be metrics we'll use to evaluate the success of this program. Short term, we're going to measure it very objectively with the number of seats and capacity that's created.
Brianna, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, thank you. That was really helpful. In 2019, you committed to reindexing once we could actually afford it. Now that we are seeing a balanced budget, is that included in future plans, and when will we see that?
Well, yes, we absolutely committed to Albertans that when we were past this great economic challenge, fiscal challenge, that we would start reindexing the personal exemption again. And right now, we're projecting a balanced budget. We've not achieved a balanced budget yet. I would suggest that as we get into this fiscal year and well into this fiscal year, and if our economic assumptions and projections in fact carry out throughout the year, my expectation is that we will be making a decision around reindexing for 2023.
Thank you. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Kelly Kreiderman, Globe and Mail.
Hi there, Minister Toews. You are talking a lot about diversification and reducing reliance on oil and gas revenues, but as of the next fiscal year, every $1 change in WTI is going to mean hundreds of millions of dollars more than last year. Does this signal that Alberta is going to be more reliant than ever on the price of oil in the next 3 years at least?
Well, you're right. We have a royalty structure in this province that's very sensitive to changes in energy prices. And the higher energy prices go, and the more oil sands projects that move from pre to post payout, the more sensitive the Alberta government royalty revenues become relative to WTI prices. And I'm thankful right now that we have significant revenues coming from our energy industry. But it's not an either or. At the same time, we're doing all we can and seeing actually really great results on economic diversification in this province. And that's reflected, again, in increased corporate income tax revenues, increased personal income tax revenue projections over the course of the fiscal plan. And so even, in 23-24 and 24-25, in the out years of our fiscal plan, as we project oil prices to come down, and non-renewable resource revenues to drop, our total revenues are projected to increase. Why? Because corporate income tax revenue, personal income tax revenue is going to be going up quite significantly. And that's in part due to increasing, more diversified economy.
Kelly, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. Of course, these budget documents are prepared weeks in advance. Does anything about what is happening with the war in Europe at this moment change Alberta's outlook in any significant way from your perspective?
Well, first I have to say I'm grieved by what's going on in Ukraine today. I'm appalled at the naked aggression that Russia is showing towards Ukraine. And it's having an impact, no doubt, adding a risk premium to energy prices. But, energy prices will go up and down. Again, they're a commodity. We've seen great volatility in the last year and a half, incredible volatility. And we've seen significant volatility even if we go back to mid-December. I believe mid-December of 2021, we were trading around $85. And by the end of December, we dropped down into the low 60s, and then prices have come back up for a couple of reasons. So that's why we're focused on the bottom half of our income statement. That's why we're ensuring that we're delivering government services most cost effectively, being informed by our fiscal anchors. And that's why we're continuing to do all we can to position this province for investment attraction, economic growth, expanded fiscal capacity, and diversification.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Tom Vernon, Global News.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking my question. A lot of Edmontonians are looking at the World Cup bid, wondering if there's going to be provincial support for this. Is there any consideration from the province at this time for putting forward money towards this FIFA bid?
Sure. Well, thanks, Tom. Tom, we have funded the Secretariat to the tune of $1 million. That group are working with the City of Edmonton and working forward kind of through the process. We've not made any final decisions as a provincial government in terms of, ultimately funding the total ask. But we have funded the Secretariat. Again, we're working with the city and others on kind of getting down to that final question. No final decisions have been made.
Did you have a follow-up? Tom, are you there?
Tom has left queue.
Okay. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Thank you. Chelan Selsky, CTV.
Hi. My question is in regards to the most operating budget increase of about $515 million this year. But the budget plan seems to be based on a recovery from the pandemic. Are you prepared to spend more than the $750 million in COVID contingency funds?
Chelan, you were breaking up. I didn't hear all of that question, but the part I did hear was that you identified the $750 million COVID contingency, and I believe your question was, are we prepared to spend more? Should we encounter greater challenges from the pandemic in the upcoming year? And Chelan, what I would say is our government has been clear from day one in this pandemic that we will not withhold resources from health in order to deal with the pandemic. That's been the way we've operated, again, from day one back in 2020. And I can say with certainty that we'll continue to operate in that manner.
Chelan, did you have a follow-up?
I do, and it's in regards to education. It pertains to actual education funding for instruction. I'm noticing in one of the budget documents that early childhood learning to grade 12 instruction, that amount actually is going to go down from $6.5 billion to $6.554. It's a decrease of about $780,000 in the budget. It's not a lot, but it is a decrease. I'm wondering how the cost of funding instruction could actually be going down, as we're hearing that more and more students are actually entering the system.
Well, with the micro specifics in education, I would refer those questions to the education minister. But what I can say is that we're increasing funding for education broadly in this budget. We're increasing funding by 1.5%. And again, the minister over the last couple of years has implemented a new funding formula, which has actually put more resources into the classroom. So that's been extremely positive. With that aspect, new funding formula, along with this increase, we're confident that we can continue to deliver world-class education to the next generation.
Thank you. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Dylan Short, Post Media.
Hi there. Going back to the natural gas rebate, I just want to go back to that 650 trigger point. It looks like Direct Energy this last month was charging around 4.842, and a lot of Albertans are already worried about their utility bill. I guess, could you just go over a little bit more how you came up with this 650 trigger point?
Sure. The way we came up with the 650 trigger point is we went back to the program that Ralph Klein implemented way back, I believe, in 2003. And at that time, he had a 450 trigger point. And when we indexed that with inflation, of course, we actually would get to 680. So we rounded that down to 650, and that's why we chose the 650. Again, this is a consumer price protection measure. This is a program that effectively can ensure that Albertans need not worry about a significant run-up in natural gas prices, like we observed here in the early 2000s in this province, or like the folks in parts of Europe and Asia are experiencing right now. That if we hit that 650 threshold as an average monthly price, that in fact there will be consumer price protection.
Dylan, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, it's not really a follow-up, but a different part of the budget. Looking at AISH, it looks like it had a 0.96% increase. Obviously, we've heard about a lot of inflation in living costs. So I guess just how did you come up with this slight increase when we've seen, upwards of 9% inflation for just living costs and being able to afford rent and food and everything else that goes into it?
Sure. Well, that increase would reflect what we believe will be an increase in participation or users of the program. Our AISH payments, monthly payments to users of the program remain approximately $400 higher per month than the next closest province. In fact, when we were taking a look, when we basically sat down in 2019, and we, again, inherited a government spend that was about $10 billion higher than comparator provinces, we looked at every area where we were an outlier. We were an outlier on AISH payments, but we chose at that point in time not to cut AISH payments. We believed that would create undue hardship on AISH recipients, and so we decided to leave those payments in place, even though they're $400 higher than other provinces, and we're committed to leaving them there.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Thank you. Audrey Neveau, Radio-Canada.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. We've seen inflation being higher than we've seen in a long time this year, and it's still predicted to be very high in the upcoming future. However, there are very little measures in this budget except this rebate to help people face the increase in the cost of living. So why not help people face this situation right now? And why are you, especially on the rebate, why are you waiting for prices to basically double from the prediction you're doing?
Well, I mean, in terms of inflation, you're absolutely right. We are in an inflationary environment. We're predicting that inflation will basically land at 3.2% in 2022. That's really where we landed in 2021 at 3.2%. We expect that to start to decline and end up at 2.2% in the out years. And this is what we're doing as a government to better position Albertans during a time of inflation. Number one, we're doing all we can to position the province for economic growth, which results in increased investment attraction, additional job opportunities for Albertans, and increased wages. And we're seeing that in the economy right now. We're actually expecting wages to go up faster and higher than inflation over the next 3 years. And I know that there's a timing factor, and you know, it affects everybody a bit differently. But we're looking to improve and increase opportunities for Albertans in terms of better employment opportunities here over the next few years. And I'm quite confident that we're going to see that. The other thing we're doing is we're looking to keep taxes low in this province. I believe the most durable and beneficial thing that governments can do in times of inflation is to spend less, borrow less, and tax less. And in fact, if we would compare Ontario, for example, Ontario, if we took a couple making $75,000 a year with 2 children, that couple in Alberta would pay approximately $3,800 less in taxes than the couple in Ontario. That shows the benefit of focusing on efficient delivery of government services, borrowing less, and taxing less. And I know it's tough. I know it's tight. I mean, I've looked at our own utility bills. I know what it's like to go to the grocery store right now. We're seeing upward cost pressure. But again, we're looking to expand employment opportunities for Albertans, and I'm quite confident that we're going to see wages continue to increase, and we're looking to deliver government services most efficiently so we can keep taxes low. The other thing I should point out, in Alberta, we don't have a sales tax. That's a between 6 and 12% advantage on a lot of consumable and a lot of goods. We want to focus on delivering efficiently, keeping taxes low.
Thank you. We're going to go to the next caller. Operator, can you put the next caller through?
Sorry.
Oh.
Thank you. Rick Bell, Calgary Sun.
Good afternoon, Minister. I know you've answered some questions about the oil roller coaster, so I'll just make it perhaps a little blunter. If oil was at $40 a barrel, or at $50 a barrel, and if that's what you were projecting it instead of $70 a barrel, what would we have a surplus? Probably not. So could you tell me what the deficit would be, ballpark, if the projection for the 22 budget would be, let's say, $40 or $50 a barrel instead of what it is projected to be now?
Well, Rick, what I can say is that at $40 and $50 WTI prices, no, we wouldn't be projecting a balanced budget. As we pointed out, we're projecting $70 WTI, basically West Texas Intermediate prices for the upcoming year, and we're projecting a $500 million surplus, a very modest surplus. So I think it's fair to say that, if oil prices were, materially lower than 70, we would be in a deficit position. But, I'll make reference to a previous point that I made. Oil prices in this province rise and they fall. We've seen that before. It'll happen again. That's why we're focused on managing what we can manage. Number one, delivery of government services in the most cost-effective and efficient manner, basically informed by our fiscal anchors. Again, we had a fiscal anchor of ensuring that we were delivering services on a per capita basis at least as efficiently as compared to provinces. And the good news in this budget, I can say we've arrived. That's critical for putting this province on a sustainable fiscal trajectory. The second part of that plan is to continue to position this province for disproportionate investment attraction broadly throughout the economy. And we're seeing a great response to that. We're seeing investment attraction in the tech sector, in film and television, aviation and aerospace. We're seeing it in agriculture manufacturing, food manufacturing, petrochemical manufacturing. We're seeing investment broadly throughout the economy, and that will ultimately provide more stability to the revenues of this province. We're focusing on what we can manage. Oil prices will go up and down, but we're looking to create more stability, more sustainability in Alberta's income statement.
Rick, did you have a follow-up?
Yes. Minister, what do you say to those Albertans who aren't feeling, yet at least, that the province is on a roll? So these are essentially people, of which there are many, whose revenues, their own personal revenue stream, that is to say the money coming into their household, is more or less flat, and their expenses are going up, in some cases quite considerably, and not just natural gas bills. But what do you say to those people whose own lived reality, at least now, does not square with some of the very optimistic reality that you're pointing to?
Sure, Rick, and there's no doubt there's Albertans right now that haven't had a pay raise yet. There are Albertans out there right now who perhaps remain unemployed. And what I say to those Albertans is we are, again, doing all we can to position this economy for investment attraction and economic growth. This budget also highlights and focuses on ensuring that Albertans have the skills that they need to step into that higher paying job, perhaps that better paying occupation, to have more opportunity so that they have higher household income. And we are expecting that wages, average weekly earnings, will be rising faster than the rate of inflation over the next 3 years. I recognize that some Albertans are no doubt in the position where they're not yet benefiting from increased opportunity. But we're doing all we can to get as many Albertans there as possible. And at the same time, again, we're focused on delivering most efficient government so that we can keep taxes as low as possible.
Thank you. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Thank you. Emma Greeny, Globe and Mail.
Yeah, g'day, Minister. Thanks for taking my question. Hope your cowboy boots are comfortable today. On the CCUS tax credit, your government is asking for 60 to 75%. I assume that's covering 60 to 75% of project costs. How confident are you that that's what you're going to be seeing from Ottawa?
Well, look, it was Ottawa, it was the federal government who set effectively their climate goals, emissions goals. And no doubt those emissions goals have a big impact on particularly the oil sands, but Alberta's energy industry broadly. And so last year we advocated, along with the energy industry, for the federal government to develop an investment tax credit that would be at least equivalent to the American approach, the Q45 approach. And we were pleased when Minister Freeland announced an investment tax credit in Budget 2021. They now need to calibrate that credit to ensure that it's at least equivalent to the American credit, to ensure that we don't see a flight of capital from Canada down into the U.S. And I can say this, that oil sands producers are committed to getting to net zero, and carbon capture and storage is a part of that equation. So we need the federal government to step up and adequately calibrate this investment tax credit so that it's meaningful, so that it can provide enough incentive and assistance to make those big, large, costly infrastructure investments.
Emma, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, when you mentioned net zero there, obviously the net zero oil sands alliance is kind of what you're alluding to. But more broadly, Alberta has an ESG secretariat. A lot of the focus is on net zero in investments and such. Is Alberta ever going to set itself a net zero goal for the province to try and help with that marketing of itself as an environmentally responsible jurisdiction, or are you just going to continue leaving it up to corporations to do what they should be doing?
Well, we have policy in this province that that ultimately results in lower emissions. We have the TIER program, our heavy emitter levy program. Again, proceeds from that program are used to reinvest in research and development to discover and effectively implement new cutting-edge technologies that bring down carbon emissions. This province was a leader in carbon emission reduction, certainly in the energy industry, and we will continue to provide that leadership.
Thank you. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Stephanie Pruse, CTV.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my question. I guess just going back a little bit, you mentioned that you have confidence that wages will increase. I'm wondering if you have any specifics about which industries you see the wages increasing in.
Sure, that's a good question. Anecdotally, I'm hearing from certainly employers across a number of sectors that are increasing wages just to retain or attract the talent and skill sets that they need. So I would suggest we're going to see wage increases broadly throughout the economy. But I can say very specifically in the energy industry, CAP, I believe, has released the statement, and perhaps CAODC has stated that they're expecting wages in that sector to go up by 10% this year. Now, that sector has been held down for quite a number of years, but 10% is a very significant increase. And again, anecdotally, I hear employers, whether it's restaurant owners or manufacturers or others, I hear them talking about increasing wages to attract skilled employees and to retain them.
Do you have follow-up?
Oh, yeah, I do have a follow-up. Thank you. There's also been some discussion about, increases in spending, confidence that consumer confidence will increase. We're also dealing with possibly a interest rate increase from the central bank, and I'm wondering if there's any sort of concern that consumer confidence will be eroded by things like a bank rate increase or increase in fees and services or just natural resources, things like that.
Sure. Well, as you point out, there are a lot of factors that go into consumer confidence. And my expectation is that we will see monetary policy tighten up. I expect that we'll see rate hikes, rate increases from the Bank of Canada in this upcoming year. I expect as well that we'll start to see a kind of a turn down of the fiscal stimulus that the federal government has been putting out into the economy. That's been a factor that's been driving inflation. But again, there are a number of factors that affect rising costs. Certainly our supply chain challenges that we're experiencing right now globally are impacting inflation and creating inflation pressure. But again, that's why we're focused in this province on managing what we can manage. We're focused on ensuring that Albertans have more opportunities, more job opportunities, perhaps more career opportunities in occupations maybe that didn't exist 5 years ago as we take a look at the tech sector, maybe even the film and television sector in this province. So we're focused on ensuring that Albertans have more opportunities that could lead to higher paying jobs, and we believe that's government's deep responsibility. And again, I'll reiterate the fact that we're also focused on delivering efficient government so that we can keep taxes low in this province.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Thank you. Yes, the follow-up from Audrey Nouveau, Radio-Canada.
Hi, thanks for putting me back on. On the healthcare spending, the Premier said that it was an historic investment, I quote him. But we heard today that the increase in the operational spending is still below the population growth and the inflation. That's actually less than the annual increases in the later years of the NDP government. So why is your government touting it as a significant increase?
Well, because it is a significant increase. Again, we inherited by far and away the most expensive healthcare system in the country. And we still have the best funded healthcare system of any province in the nation. But at the same time, our Minister of Health and officials have been working hard to deliver more efficiently. There was an EY performance report of AHS. That report identified approximately 50 recommendations to deliver health care in the province of Alberta more efficiently and cost effectively. So yes, we added $900 million to health's base budget, last year, and we're adding an additional $600 million this year, and that's over and above any specific COVID funding. At the same time, the Minister of Health and AHS are working to implement recommendations from the EY report and deliver more efficiently. That combination will result in better service and more cost-effective use of taxpayer dollars.
Thank you, and sorry about that, Audrey. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Thank you, Lauren Boothby, Edmonton Journal.
Hi, Minister. I'm wondering if you are able to speak to parts of the budget where the government is either giving money to energy companies that are either curbing emissions or making some kind of cleaner energy projects, or in reverse, receiving money from the polluters, and how all of that sort of fits in with the expected increase in oil prices and how the government expects money to come in from that?
Sure. No, that's a great question. As we see oil production rise and energy prices increase, we're expecting to actually collect additional funds from the TIER program. And so we actually collect these funds from the industry itself. Those funds then are effectively deployed by the Minister of Environment into a whole host and series of projects that effectively research and development projects that, again, work to find new technologies that can ultimately bring down emissions in the energy industry. And again, very often those technologies can be applied more broadly. We've also we're setting aside additional funds for carbon capture and storage in the future. We recognize that that's going to be an important part of our emissions reduction strategy in the energy industry. So yes, we are expecting increased funding from the TIER program, and that will, I believe, just provide more opportunity to move technology forward and ultimately use technology to bring down the emissions in this very important industry.
Lauren, did you have a follow-up?
Yes. On orphan wells, are we spending more money to clean them up or giving loans to associations around orphan wells? Can you speak to what's going on with that?
Budget 2022 doesn't add any additional funding to the Orphan Well Association. So they're certainly working with funds that they collect from industry levies, as well as previous loan advances from both the Government of Canada and the Province of Alberta, and they're working to clean up and reclaim abandoned and orphaned wells at this point. But on top of that, we see the industry itself move forward in a very significant way in cleaning up, firstly abandoning and then effectively reclaiming inactive wells. As you know, we managed to negotiate $1 billion from the federal government a couple of years ago. We've implemented a program that incentivizes energy companies to abandon and effectively reclaim inactive wells, and so that program is progressing.
Thank you. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Thank you. Adam McVicker, Global News.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking my question. The City of Calgary invested about $250 million into its downtown revitalization strategy. I see that there is $5 million going to both the City of Calgary and the Calgary Downtown Business Association as part of some downtown revitalization work. I know the city was hoping for the province to step up and be a partner on this. I was just wondering what guarantees you can give to the City of Calgary that the province is a partner in this strategy and a partner to revitalize the downtown moving forward after this budget.
Sure, good question, and I can say we hope the city will be a full partner in downtown revitalization. This was really a request that we received from Mayor Sohi, the City of Edmonton, for basically some additional funding for downtown revitalization. We've included that in the budget for Edmonton, and we then included it in the budget for Calgary as well. But we're looking, both downtowns of our major cities have been challenged, especially throughout the pandemic, but certainly in Calgary's case, even prior to the pandemic. And so this is a modest investment that we hope will make, that we're confident will make a difference in the downtown of Calgary and Edmonton, and we look forward to working very cooperatively with both city councils.
Did you have a follow-up?
Yes. The big city mayors recently were discussing services that are still very much feeling the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that includes transit. I see that there is transit funding, presumably for the Green Line in this budget, but I can't seem to find anything about help with perhaps some larger shortfalls due to low ridership because of the pandemic. So I was wondering what kind of assurances are there for municipalities who are seeing those shortfalls on their transit systems?
Sure. Well, I can say here over the last couple of years, the province has stepped up and provided relief along with the federal government for our big cities with respect to their transit systems and programs, recognizing that their ridership has been greatly reduced. And so, look, we're happy to hear from municipalities around their needs and requests.
Thank you. That takes us to the end of our press conference today, folks. Thanks.